we're going to have to be vigilant on two different fronts. We're going to have to defend the truth about the human person, made in the image and likeness of God, created male and female, created for marriage. We're also going to have to defend our freedom to live according to those truths.
Dr. Ryan Anderson, president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center and member of the White House Religious Liberty Commission, speaking at this year's Issues, Etc. Making the Case conference.
Over and over again, we're going to see that we have to form the next generation of our students, of our children, our grandchildren to believe the truth, while also defending our freedom to live it out. And then the long game is reforming our civil laws to reflect the truth.
You can watch Ryan Anderson's presentation, Making the Case for Social Conservatism, from the 2026 Issues, Etc. Making the Case conference. For a donation of $250 by Labor Day, we'll send you a link to watch an on-demand video stream and download audio recordings. Order online at issuesetc.org.
Pro-life incumbents have done very well since Dobbs. Not one pro-life incumbent has lost a statewide race.
Margaret Thatcher very famously said, socialism works great until you run out of other people's money. In the Islamic system, the system works great until you run out of the infidels' money.
I love this quotation from Luther. He says, "Spare me from a church in which there are no sinners." The essential character of being a Christian is to be a redeemed sinner.
If we are Christians and we suffer, is that so unbelievable that we should bear a splinter of Jesus' cross after he has gone through so much as a perfect one?
Hospice nurses driving around from patient to patient love listening to Issues, Etc.
There are Christians who believe what the United States really needs is an established religion. But before we go that direction, maybe we should reflect on how that's worked out for countries that do have an established religion. We don't have to look very far, either in history or geographically. Great Britain has an established religion, the Church of England. How is that working out for Christianity? It seems that Christianity is getting the short end of that stick. Greetings and welcome to Issues, Etc., live on this Friday afternoon, July the 10th. I'm Todd Wilkin. Thanks for tuning us in. We'll talk with Dr. Carl Trueman about King Charles III and the state of Christianity in England. We'll spend some time talking with Dr. Doug Groothuis, author of the new book, Taking Back Truth, A Biblical Response to Common Cultural Lies. And then Pastor Chris Roseborough of Fighting for the Faith joins us for This Week in Pop Christianity. Carolyn Dennis claims to be a prophet. She's teaching the reverse rapture. Dr. Carl Trueman is professor of biblical and religious studies at Grove City College. He's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, author of several books, including his latest, The Desecration of Man, and a recent column for First Things titled No Faith Worth Defending. Dr. Trueman, welcome back.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about this update to the verbiage regarding King Charles III's relationship to the Church of England.
Well, the update to the verbiage is really an informal one. King Charles's coronation oath is set by law. He is required to take a vow, a solemn vow, to uphold the Christian faith, and as reflected, embodied in the documents that define the Church of England. What he's done informally is, for many years now, he's said that he doesn't want to be the defender of the faith, which is an official title given to the English monarch, actually by the Pope originally before the Reformation. Defender of the faith, meaning defender of the Christian faith. He wants to be defender of faiths, reflecting the diverse religious nature of English society today. And then last week or so, he's altered his title sort of unofficially. I don't think this has any constitutional status. He's changed it from defender of the faith, replaced that with protector of the space for faith within the multi-faith nation. And essentially what he's done there is taken out the distinctively Christian dogmatic content and focused, I think, more upon the idea of a religious sensibility in general as being the thing that he, as the English monarch, is obliged to defend. So he's really evacuated his coronation oath of any specific Christian content and turned it into more of, I would describe it as a kind of romantic sensibility.
So you mentioned before that he's been not hinting, but discussing this informally for a long time. Do we know why Charles wants to broaden his role with respect to religious belief in England?
Yeah, it's hard, of course, to judge a man's inner motives. But I would say his attitude certainly, as I hinted in my first answer, reflects the fact that England is no longer a Christian nation in the sense that the vast majority of its population would be adherents of the Christian religion, specifically of the Church of England. So there's a sense in which he's accommodating to a social reality there. And I suspect that personally, he's somewhat syncretistic in his own religious opinions. I said it's hard to speculate a man's private motives, but he certainly seems very, very comfortable and very, very appreciative mixing with leaders of other non-Christian religions. That's been a hallmark of his life on the religious front. So I think the shift in the language also probably reflects a personal commitment to a kind of syncretistic religion.
What deeper problem does this informal change in Charles's role highlight?
It highlights a number of problems. I think one, it highlights the fact that the Christian religion is no longer something that has a strong role in uniting the nation. It's not really part of the cultural intuitions of the nation understood as a whole. I think it reflects a problem that established churches have in the modern world. And the Church of England, of course, is the established church of England and therefore enjoys a certain privileges and law and certain obligations. It's hard for a dogmatically defined exclusive religion, so to speak, to play that role in a modern pluralist society. So I think we see a number of tensions or problems emerging at this particular point, focused on the approach of the king.
You say that when it comes to defending the faith, the Church of England itself offers very little help. What do you mean by that?
Throughout my entire lifetime, the Church of England has been renowned for many things, but it has never been renowned for its strong dogmatic commitment to Christian faith as defined in the creeds of the early church, or even in the 39 Articles, which are the doctrinal statement of the Church of England itself. It has tended to be much more a function of the broader social movements. Particularly, I think, in the last 40, 50 years, it has defined itself in a kind of socially progressive way. That's possibly a reaction to the Church of England, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago now. The Church of England was seen as very jingoistic and very complicit in the First World War, and I think that did a lot of damage to it. For many years, it was known as the Conservative Party at prayer. I think what we've seen in the last 40 or 50 years is a conscious reaction against that image and a commitment to social progressivism. But what we do not see in the Church of England is a strong commitment to its own theological standards or a concern to make sure that its priests and its bishops and its archbishops themselves believe or maintain those standards. It's a doctrinally very, very lax denomination.
So other than that kind of stance there in the halls of the Church of England, that theological hollowness, if you will, what has been the state of the Christian faith in Great Britain among the population?
It's one of decline. It's a day of small things for Christians in England, Scotland, and Wales. It depends where you live, because there are some very good churches, there are some very faithful churches, there are some very vibrant Christian congregations. They're few and far between. So I would say nationally the picture is bleak, but locally in certain places there are some very faithful, Christ-honoring, spirit-filled, vibrant congregations.
How has the Church of England in many ways become a victim of its own multiculturalism?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not a big fan of the establishment principle, has to be said. And I think one of the problems you have with an established church is its role is not only driven by the gospel, its role is also driven by the exigencies of cultural politics of the day. And the Church of England has, I think, become a cipher or a function of the broader multiculturalism that has driven British politics really over the last 25, 30, 35 years. We're beginning to see, of course, that multiculturalism is starting to not just fray at the edges, but collapse at the center at this point. But the church has been very committed to a pluralist vision of Britain and has taken its role in developing that idea very, very seriously, not realizing, I think, that ultimately you have to make a choice. You can either be a faithful church or you can be an arm of the state on a multicultural project. You cannot be both.
How has the influx of immigration, in particular Islamic immigration, changed things over the last several decades?
Oh, I think it's transformed things. Again, there are numerous things one could say about this. I mean, on the one hand, it's one thing to allow immigrants into the country, and I think that's a good and appropriate thing to do in many, many circumstances. The problem is when you don't have enough confidence in your own culture, you tend to not expect the immigrants to assimilate, but to form powerful subcultures. And I think that's what's happened in Britain. Now, when you move to the present day, you have a Labour Party in charge whose power base is disproportionately focused in areas of high Middle Eastern and Muslim immigration. And this inevitably affects the approach of politicians who need to get re-elected every 4 or 5 years. And it's very clear looking at what's happened in Britain, for example, relative to the scandals surrounding the rape gangs, these gangs that were raping young British white women. It's very clear that the electoral politics of Britain played significantly into the Labour Party's very, very half-hearted response to that. I think on that issue, though, it's not just immigration. There's also, coming from Britain, it's hard for Americans often to grasp this, but class shapes everything. And I look at the rape gang crisis and I think, yes, there's an immigration issue here, but there's also a class issue. These were white working class girls. Who cares about them? That would be the British establishment mentality. So it's a complicated issue, but I think Muslim immigration has dramatically skewed the agenda of British politics.
So the question remains, why and how does the Church of England remain? Dr. Carl Trueman is our guest. We're talking about King Charles and the state of Christianity in Great Britain.
It's also a confirmation of what the church has proclaimed for millennia, that we are not made to be alone, but we are made for covenant.
Sociologist Dr. Brad Wilcox speaking at this year's Issues Etc. Making the Case conference.
So give today's young men and women the truth that they deserve. Pursue marriage, pursue it with intention, and pursue it in your 20s, when the window is widest and the possibilities most open. The road ahead, of course, is not easy, but it leads somewhere worth going, and you, 20-somethings here, were made for this journey.
You can watch and listen to Dr. Brad Wilcox making the case for 20-something marriage from the 2026 Making the Case conference. For a $250 gift by Labor Day, we'll send you a link to video and audio recordings of the entire conference. Learn more at issuesetc.org.
Contending for truth in an age of anti-truth. You're listening to Issues Etc.
This is Pastor Matthew Harrison, President of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The LCMS operates the second largest parochial school system in the United States. What can you expect from a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod school? There's one race, the human race. And Jesus died for the sins of every man, woman, and child from every land and every nation. Life begins at conception. All life is precious from womb to tomb. and every student, parent, and teacher is created in the very image of God. There's right and wrong, and we know which is which from the Ten Commandments. There are only two sexes, male and female. He created them. Marriage is the lifelong union of one man and one woman. There's such a thing as objective, absolute truth, and it's found in the person and work of Jesus Christ and His Word. To find a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod school near you, visit lcms.org/schools.
Welcome back to Issues, Etc. I'm Todd Wilkin. Dr. Carl Trueman of Grove City College is our guest. We're talking about King Charles III and the state of Christianity in England. So, Dr. Trueman, if so few attend church in Great Britain, why and how is the Church of England maintained?
Well, there are various reasons for that. One, it's an extremely wealthy landowner, so it's a very, very wealthy organization. Two, it's established by law. The Archbishop of Canterbury crowns the monarch. The monarch is the man who decides who gets appointed as bishop. The relationship of Westminster Parliament and the Church of England is extremely complicated, and to disentangle that, to disestablish the church, would be an incredibly complicated parliamentary process. And I think there's a sense in which the church continues because it would just be more complicated to stop it continuing. That's a great question, by the way.
Is it, in a sense, a branch of government in some way?
I would say yes. It's the danger of an establishment principle is always that the church becomes an arm of the secular magistrate. And in many, many ways, that is what's happened to the Church of England. It's been there to rubber stamp progressive ideas as they've come out of Westminster under both the last Conservative government and the current Labour one.
Is there any understanding of the role of religion in Britain? At one time, obviously, given what we've talked about here, the constitutional establishment of a church, but it sounds like things, while not constitutionally, have changed a lot.
Yeah, I think if you ask the average Englishman or Englishwoman in the street what's the role of the church, they wouldn't really have much of a sophisticated answer to that. They'd see the church, the church exists in the local parish to do nice things, and it exists at a national level for certain ceremonial roles. For example, the crowning of the monarch, when one monarch dies and another one succeeds to the throne. I think the idea of the church having a significant role in British culture has long since died.
You say that there really isn't a vocabulary any longer for a meaningful discussion about Christianity in England. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think this is a danger for the church in any culture. I still do think this about the United States in some ways, that the language, for example, of Protestant evangelicalism has become so transformed by the American dream that it's very difficult to talk about grace and forgiveness in America with a biblical understanding of those things. They tend to just mean things that American culture finds pleasant. In Britain, I think you have the same phenomenon. It works it out in a different way, but you have a church that has allowed its language of grace and forgiveness and love to be colonized and transformed by the world of multiculturalism, the world of the therapeutic society. And that means that the kind of language that people like you and I would want to draw on in order to speak the gospel at this particular context, that language has been, in the common mind, corrupted and transformed into ways that are anti-gospel. So the loss of the Church of England as being a faithful witness to the resurrection, death and resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, that's part and parcel of this loss of ability to be able to talk to people about what Christianity is in England. Their vision of it has been so perverted by the Anglican Church over the last 20, 30, 40 years that it's meaningless, literally meaningless.
If I asked you to opine about the future of the church's role in England 50 years from now, 100 years from now? What kind of picture would you paint?
I think on current trajectory, it would be a very bleak one. Disestablishment's always a possibility, even though I think it would be very, very cumbersome to achieve that. More likely, the church we're going to see a lot of parishes closing down, a lot of parishes amalgamated. The church will become more and more the equivalent of the drunken uncle at the party, if you like. Yes, he's there, but he's rather embarrassing. Wheel him out on certain occasions and expect him to stay out of sight on other occasions. Having said that, the Lord is sovereign, and the Lord can revive his church with a word. And it's very, very possible that we will see a resurgence of Orthodox Christianity and a strong, robust leadership emerging. That, I think, will be purely an act of divine grace if it happens. Humanly speaking, I don't see that emerging at this point. But God is a sovereign God. He's done more with less in the past. We can only hope that he does similar with the Church of England in the next 50 years.
What can Christians in the U.S. learn from the decline of Christianity in England?
I think it should certainly be a sobering moment for those who look for a Christian magistrate and look for some sort of establishment principle over here. Anybody who advocates the establishment principle, I'd want to say to them, well, look at the countries that have had it and see how well it's gone. It has not worked very well thus far. Secondly, I think the danger of assuming that the Western way of tolerance is the desire of all the nations. That's a dangerous thing to do. I think we need to realize that it's not so much often that other cultures are envious of us. It's that they fundamentally disagree with us that creates the kind of tensions and problems we see today. So I think the fate of Christianity in Europe should be very, very sobering for Christians in America and make them realize that nothing can be taken for granted at this point.
Dr. Carl Trueman is professor of biblical and religious studies at Grove City College. He's a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, author of several books, including his latest, The Desecration of Man, and a recent column for First Things titled No Faith Worth Defending. You'll find a link to this column and to The Desecration of Man on the podcast page for this episode at issuesetc.org. Dr. Trueman, thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
We will get some biblical answers to cultural lies with Dr. Doug Grothheitz after the break.
The church's music from the 20th century. The 17th century. The 11th century. The 8th century. The 4th century. The best of the church's music from the past 2,000 years. LutheranPublicRadio.org.
Essential exercise for the Christian mind. You're listening to Issues, Etc.
Unity and variety can be a hot topic among Christians and Lutherans in particular, and the June-July issue of the Lutheran Witness takes this topic up with articles such as Unity and Variety Through the Ages by Richard Serena, Formed Together by Sean Dinzer, A Call to Faithful and Harmonious Variety in Worship, and much more. To get your copy, visit cph.org/witness or visit witness.lcms.org to learn more. The Lutheran Witness, helping you interpret the world from a Lutheran perspective.
The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod cares deeply for those who protect our nation. Are you or a loved one currently serving? Ministry to the Armed Forces would like to help. We provide devotional literature to encourage faith. Send your mailing address to lcmschaps@lcms.org or call us at 314-996-1337. Those in uniform are comforted with Psalm 28. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in Him, and He helps me.